Welcome everyone. Welcome. Welcome to another episode of BIM After Dark Live. My name is Jeff, also known as the Revit Kid. Thank you for joining me today. I know usually it's a little darker in here and the lighting might be a little different. For those of you who have been tuning in the last 60 whatever episodes, most of the episodes have been BIM After Dark, but our guest today is in a different time zone, and if I did it at our normal 9 p.m. Eastern, she probably would have been at around 4 a.m. in the morning, so I wasn't going to do that to you. As well as it'll be kind of nice because I know some of my European friends from across the pond haven't been able to see it live, so hopefully you guys can join us today. I'm super excited. The topic is V-Ray for Revit. I personally haven't used it in quite a few years, so I'm super excited to see how far it's come, some of the new features. We're going to be talking about what it is, some of the workflows, as well as some of the new features set to release very soon. Before we do jump into that and I introduce my guest, I did want to thank Polycam, who is our title sponsor of this episode. So Polycam, for those of you that don't know, it is an application for your iPhone or your iPad that uses the LiDAR scanner as well as the phone itself, the photos I should say on the phone itself, to create 3D models. And from those 3D models, you can bring them into Revit, point clouds, all kinds of cool stuff. If you're interested in checking out more, head on over to polycam.bimafterdark.com or scan the QR code behind my back here on the screen, or check out an episode on the channel here on YouTube from it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago now, where I ran through the whole process for you guys. So Polycam, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys for sponsoring this episode, and you guys check them out and support them for sponsoring and supporting us. Okay, looks like we got some people. Before I introduce my guest, I did want to remind everyone, if you're here right now, whatever today is, December 16th. Sorry, some people said they couldn't hear me very well. I'll fix my mic a little bit. Sorry if that's a loud noise while I do it. December 16th live, then feel free to chat. I will be checking out the chat as we go along. I encourage questions and comments in the chat room, and we'll definitely incorporate them into our conversation. So again, we got some old and new visitors. How's it going, everybody? Welcome, Jeff Fry. Hey, man. And for now, we will introduce my guest, Anna. How's it going? Oh, what?
Here.
Yes. I appreciate you staying up a little late. I know it's better than probably the 3 a.m. or whatever time it would have been if we did this at 9 p.m. my time. So
yes, definitely.
Thanks for joining. And I apologize. I didn't even bother trying to pronounce your last name, but I will make sure that it's in the description so everyone knows your full name. But I figured it'd be better than butchering it. I would just say Anna. So welcome, Anna. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me in your show. It's my first time here, so I can't be any more than excited.
Awesome. I'm also very excited too. Like I said, I actually, it's funny. I didn't show anyone. This is a V-Ray T-shirt that I got at a conference. Like, God, I don't remember how many,
cool.
nine years ago or something like that. But yeah, I mean, for those of you that don't know, V-Ray pretty much has set the standard for rendering engine, and I was telling Anna before we jumped on, I think the last time I actually used the V-Ray for Revit plugin was probably 2017 or 18, and so I'm super excited to see how far it's come and some of the new features. So before we jump into that, I guess, Anna, maybe let everyone know briefly sort of who you are, what you do, and why you're here on the show with me today.
Yeah, all right. So my name is Ana. I will pronounce my family name for everyone who is wondering. So it's Ana Lyubenova. I'm architect, a licensed one, based in Bulgaria, where our headquarters is based as well. I've been with Chaos for the past almost 6 years, where I have always been involved with the V-Ray for Revit development. I took various roles, and currently I'm the product manager of V-Ray for Revit.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So hopefully, if you guys have V-Ray for Revit questions, we've got the person here who can answer them, right, Anna?
Yeah.
I would imagine so. How's it going, David and Jim? What's going on, guys? Welcome to the chat. Awesome. So I guess before we jump into some live demo and some features, I guess I'd like to get a sense of how you feel since you have been so involved with this for 6 years, you said, which is awesome. How you feel the progression of this tool living inside of Revit has come. I mean, I know, and again, this was 6 years ago or so. I know in the beginning it was definitely the workflow was a little challenging, but I do know that has improved over time. So would you say would you say that the workflow, in your opinion, has become much more seamless between Revit and V-Ray, and and it must have been a challenge, I would imagine.
Yes, definitely. It has become more complete, and we also try to split the workflows into two, one for beginners and for people that are not chasing super high realism. For those type of people, we have V-Ray Vision, which is our real-time edition, which comes together with V-Ray for Revit. And in addition to that, we have the full-featured V-Ray, the way you know it from other host applications like 3ds Max or SketchUp and Rhino. Of course, our interface is simplified because we know that the Revit users are not those people that are using 3ds Max, so their needs are more basic. So we try to reduce as much as possible all the complex switches and stuff.
I would say first, as a Revit user, no, that's okay. As a Revit user, I went through the process of learning V-Ray before it was integrated in Revit for 3D Max, just because it was the standard, and at the time we really had no options for Revit as far as rendering in that quality, and so the workflow between it. And I do remember that one of the scariest things about V-Ray is those 4 or 5 settings tabs, and how you can change one setting by like a single decimal, and all of a sudden your rendering takes 3 days instead of 3 hours. And so I do like the idea of having sort of the two approaches, where maybe someone who doesn't necessarily want to dig into those could be terrifying settings, but still having them accessible for people who do. So that's awesome.
Yeah, in the past, we were also limited with hardware, while nowadays things are not like that. And most of those settings that you mentioned are actually hidden in V-Ray for Revit. So I don't know if you can see my screen already.
We can if you want to. Go for it. I'm showing the screen right now. Yep, they can see your screen.
Yeah, okay, so let's get started with just taking a look at the V-Ray toolbar, where we have these simple buttons, but some of them also open some dialogues with settings. I will explain what they do. But for example, we have only these settings that refer to the V-Ray engine, which are not that many. But even if you don't want to get into that much detail, you can simply select which render engine you would like to use, either your CPU or your GPU, depending on which one is faster. And you can just leave it like that and control everything from within the quality presets over here. So these presets are connected with all the complex settings that you mentioned. So
got it. So anyone who doesn't want to dig that deep into V-Ray or into the V-Ray settings, I mean, it's simple as picking your rendering CPU or GPU, and then setting the quality to whatever level quality you want, which is good. That's good.
Yeah.
Because I do know that
exactly.
that for a long time that has always kind of turned people off of V-Ray, who maybe don't have the desire to understand all those levers and dials within the rendering engine itself.
Yeah.
Awesome. So why don't we just jump into it? Why don't we let's jump into before we start showing some new. So this is V-Ray 5 for Revit, right? But this is
This
a
is yeah, this is
unreleased
V-Ray
version.
5. Yeah. So I'm using one of our work in progress builds of V-Ray 5 Update 2, which is coming shortly after the Christmas holidays. Well, it was actually supposed to be released a little bit earlier, but we had some unpredicted COVID circumstances within the team.
Yep.
Yeah.
As the whole world,
cannot,
right?
yeah, as the whole world, you cannot predict COVID.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is going to be released after the Christmas holidays. I'm using one of those builds that are not super stable because it is not an official build but a work in progress one. But anyway, I'm planning to show you all the features, everything new, as well as some verified features that were really big. So yeah, I want to start with introducing the main two features of Vray 5 for Revit.
Sure.
Probably some of the people that are watching us right now are familiar with them, but number one is our Chaos Cosmos asset library. So it includes, can you see it?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So it includes various 3D models.
We're not seeing a library. Are you showing the library?
Yeah, I'm showing it.
No, I still see Revit.
So maybe I'll create a new share.
Okay. There we go. Now we see it.
Do you see it?
Yep, we see it now.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Yeah, so it includes 3D models and HDRI skies. And with the release of Update 2, it will also include a big library of brand new materials. So these are not the materials that usually come with the installation of V-Ray for Revit because it has its own library. But in addition to that, Cosmos will include all these new material types. Like, yeah, you can see them.
So I guess maybe what we can do is we can sprinkle in a little workflow with some of these features.
Definitely.
I know again as someone who's used V-Ray pretty much exclusively on the 3D Max side, I do know how important the V-Ray materials are to the quality of what's created as well. So I am interested to see how I can use those materials. So whether it's a material from Chaos Cosmos or whether it's just a material built in, how do I use those in tandem with Revit?
Yeah, okay. So now I will start our another big feature of V-Ray 5. This is the V-Ray Vision, which I already mentioned. So it is a real-time viewer that is using the V-Ray properties like materials and lights, but represents them in a simplified way so that you can simply run it in parallel with Revit and use it like a sort of a parallel viewport. Because being a plugin within Revit, we are quite limited into what we can draw within Revit's viewport. Well, we basically cannot draw or display anything while we are extensively working with materials. So there is no other way to see our materials unless you render. But rendering with V-Ray might take a little bit more time.
Right.
So that's why we included a vision into our workflow. But it is also suitable for some quick and dirty renders if you don't have time or if you are at a pretty initial stage of your design. Like in this example, it is that simple on purpose. Here is the time when I need to give a little bit more details about the model I'm using because we will need this later on. So I have the main building. It is basically in the main file, whereas the terrain is linked There is also another link with the lighting of the main building. And these are mapped with V-Ray materials. And here is another V-Ray concept that I will briefly explain. So we have the V-Ray asset editor. This is a component that is shared across V-Ray 4. Can you see it on my screen?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just checking.
Yep, no, I appreciate it.
Yeah, so first we have the V-Ray asset editor, which we normally use for creating V-Ray assets. It contains V-Ray materials. It contains V-Ray geometry types like V-Ray proxies, some additions like fur and displacement, scatter, which I will speak about later on, as well as the V-Ray textures. So whatever you create in here, and by the way, it can expand on both sides, so you can see. Mm-hmm. So on the left-hand side, we have the default library, the one that V-Ray is installed with. And on the right-hand side, we have the material preview, or whatever asset you have created here. You can preview it and play with its settings on the right-hand side panel. And to add these assets to your Revit model, you need to associate them because, well, since Revit is BIM, the only way we can do this is by replacing some stuff from the BIM database. So in the Appearance Manager, this is another main UI component in V-Ray for Revit, which is specific only for V-Ray for Revit. You can't find it in any other of our host apps because it relates to Revit itself. So here we have a list of all Revit materials, as well as a list of all Revit families. Well, not all of them, but those that are suitable for rendering. And here we replace them with V-Ray assets, and the replacement is visible only at render time when rendered with the V-Ray engine or with the V-Ray Vision real-time engine. And in this example, here I can see my project as well as the linked files. And I just use these 5 schematic materials to assign them to my model. Normally, there is also another way you can do this by going to the Global Overrides tab, where you can override all your Revit OPAC materials with one V-Ray material, as well as the transparent, the RPCs, as well as some V-Ray geometries in case you are using those in your model. And once you do this and you render, this is what we have in V-Ray Vision. So a few words with regards to V-Ray Vision. It has its own toolbar. Here you can see these are some new settings that will be included in update 2. So the first tip that I can give to everyone is to unlink the camera so that if you move around your model and you make some changes in Revit and you synchronize, your camera will not be restored to its original position. You might also decide to unlink the Revit Sun and use the one here. I will talk about later on. And the icon here with the 3 circles indicates whenever Vision is connected to Revit. When it's disconnected, you will just see the 3 circles without the lines that are connecting them. As for navigation, clicking the info icon will show you how to navigate, but really quickly, you can either use your mouse like that, or from this button here, you see the blue one. When you click it, you can navigate like in a computer game with the WASD keys on your keyboard, as well as Q and E that can move you up and down. So
Awesome. So
yeah,
as far as so the materials, you're taking your Revit materials and you're just you have your library of created or imported V-Ray materials, and you're saying this or these equal this one in V-Ray. Is that
yes.
that's not modifying the Revit material anyway, as far as the
No,
textures or anything
no,
like that, right? It's just a
it,
connection.
it yeah, it's just a connection. So your BIM database is not even touched by
Mm-hmm.
V-Ray.
Mm-hmm.
You only associate the V-Ray assets,
Mm-hmm.
and you see those associations when you render with V-Ray. But
Mm-hmm.
the Revit model remains completely clean. The only stuff that you can place in the model are those 3D assets from the Chaos Cosmos library. So the next thing that I will show you
Sure.
is how to import. I have already downloaded some trees, so really quickly I will grab this one. So at this point, we are generating a Revit family. And since it's a tree, it goes automatically to the planting category. Now I'm importing another one. Okay, and I will import one more bush. And you can notice that they immediately appear in V-Ray Vision. Yeah, I'm importing them because I will need them in a while. You'll see what for.
And I also saw when you were doing the asset, or what was it, the appearance manager, the asset manager. Was there a way to link the Cosmos assets to Revit content? So
Yeah.
So if you had like a Revit tree, you wanted to replace it.
Yeah. So when you go to the Families tab, by the way, in the past this tab was called Objects, but we renamed it to correspond to the Revit type of objects. Yeah, and for update 2, we have split it into 3 sub-tabs. So in the first one, you see your Revit content, and as soon as you have Cosmos assets in your model, those assets can only be loaded in the model. You don't need to have them placed. They will start appearing in the Cosmos sub-tab. And if you want, you can just take a family here, and in the drop-down, so the button here opens a drop-down. From here, you can replace it with any of those Cosmos assets that you have loaded in your model.
Awesome.
And yeah, with that, you can just load your Cosmos assets in the model and use whatever families you have and replace them for the purposes of nice rendering.
So it looked like I like the fact that you could do the material mapping through a link, but I assume that the family mapping may not work through linked objects, or does it? As in if you had linked objects and you wanted to replace?
It does. This is again something that we're adding to update 2. Yeah, I was planning to talk about it a little bit later on, but since you asked me, and obviously we're not having a program. Yeah, so yeah, in update 2, we are adding this new control here, which basically controls the way you extract V-Ray replacements, meaning material or family replacements, whenever they're part of a linked file. So in my example here, here's my linked file, and I have already associated its material materials from within my main Revit file. But from here, I can decide whether I want to see its original replacements, to view and override them, or I want to see them, well, not to see them, but to hide them, because if you select the read-only option, all linked documents will be hidden, but their V-Ray content will be respected when you render. And I find this quite useful because, for example, you might have linked files that already have V-Ray settings, and that way you can use those V-Ray settings, which was not possible up until update 2.
Got it. So some of those linked files, if you have V-Ray settings in those models, you can actually use those in the host file.
Yeah, if those settings are replacements of materials or families. We have the same control here in families. And it is grayed out at the moment, and I can't select it because we are running V-Ray Vision. And you can't switch this while in real time. So if I stop it, I will be able to select the setting.
Awesome.
Okay, another new addition. Well, our update 2 is quite packed with new features.
I see that.
I just realized it. Yeah, so here in the Cosmos subtab, you see this dots menu next to each item, and when you click it, you have the ability to edit that asset materials. Well, you will not start editing them straight away, but you will see, first you will see that asset materials. And in case you want to edit any of them, you click that button, which will promote that material to the asset editor. And this asset editor. And after you promote it, you can modify that material. But in my case, I just want to replace the 3 leaves because I already have these very simple and schematic materials. Imagine I didn't have time, for example, to prepare more complex materials. This is usually the case with our users. So I will just select the 4 materials of the 3 leaves, and I will replace them with my schematic green material so that they are the same color as the grass. Okay. So this is something new. It has been requested many times, and I think that people will enjoy it.
So is
another
that
thing,
any of the assets from Cosmos? So furniture, people, whatever it is that you bring in, you have the ability to modify any of their textured or maps, I should say, materials.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah. And another thing that has also been requested, and it is actually already part of V-Ray for SketchUp and Rhino. This is the scatter tool, which allows you to scatter, for example, planting on a surface to create a forest or a crowd of people, whatever you can imagine. So how it works, we first create scatter in the asset editor, and then we need to add guests. The guest objects are those that will be scattered. So in our case, I will pick these 3 Cosmos assets, and I will click Add Guests. And like I told you, our build is a work in progress. So right here we have some UI issue, so ignore it. I will keep the density and the seed the way they are. Basically, the density controls how many items you will have in a square meter, and the seed controls how those items will be distributed. There is also a collision detection parameter, as well as whether you want your assets to only face up or to be placed on all faces of the selected object. But now we need to associate scatter with the surface that we will scatter those objects on. And for that purpose, I need to go back to the Appearance Manager. And in the Families tab, we have the Scatter tab, which is, well, it has an icon because it works a little bit differently compared to the other two tabs. And here I will pick that floor and I will click to add it. Now this is my scatter host. It will host the objects that I scatter. And here in the drop-down menu, I can see the scatter that I created in the asset editor. Once I assign it, I can also modify the scale and rotation, as well as there is a scale multiplier. But as I told you that this is a work in progress build and it might not behave quite stable with that particular feature, I have a video which I can share with you. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep, we can see it.
Also another thing that we have done in update 2 is that we added grass support in Vision. So in order to make grass to appear more realistic in Vision, you need to create a Virifer asset. I will show this in a moment. And you need to rename it to grass. So in this example, I have done this before running the rendering. Right now it's loading. And there we are.
Great. And so so it scattered those trees along that floor surface.
Yeah.
And now can that scatter? You just used V-Ray assets, but can you actually use Revit families if you wanted to as objects for that scatter?
Yes, you can. But I think that Cosmos assets would look a little bit nicer when rendered.
Of course.
But still, if you want to render something more schematic or rough, you can also use the Revit families. And yeah, the video also demonstrated the various file formats you can use to export from V-Ray Vision. We are also including the standalone executable export in update 2, so people will be able to share their models with clients or with everyone they want. And yeah, here is how we create grass/fur. From this drop down here, you need to select fur. Then in order for it to appear in Vision, you need to rename it to grass. And then you need to find a material to associate it with. Like in our case, the grass is in the site. So I see it here. And whenever you have grass or displacement assigned to, see, it appeared here. Whenever you have grass or displacement assigned to a material in the list here, that material will have this tiny dot indicator here, and you will see the type of asset assigned here. Okay. And yeah, here I see something that I also wanted to mention. Starting from V-Ray 5 update 1, we included that feature which allows you to promote a Revit material in the V-Ray asset editor. So this basically takes your Revit material data and converts it to a V-Ray material in the asset editor. And after that, you can select that material and save it as a VRMAT file, and you can further reuse it as part of your library.
Well, that's great. So if you have a model that you spent the time to associate textures and bump maps and all that stuff in Revit for other purposes, you can convert those to V-Ray assets. And actually, this is a V-Ray material, I should say. So someone did have a question that I think kind of relates to this, which is, can you save any of these settings and use them in other versions of V-Ray? So I don't think it's just materials he's asking about. I think he might be asking about rendering settings too. But let's say we'll start with materials. If you were to create a material from that, I would assume that the V-Ray.mat or whatever it is, that is openable in other versions of V-Ray, most likely?
Well, it is recommended to use always the same version of V-Ray, because if you export from a higher version but you import to a lower one, there is a high chance that something hasn't been supported yet. Imagine you export a material that has some newly added settings and you attempt to load it in a previous version of the asset editor. This might work, but it is not recommended to do it. And it might not work the way you expect.
No, that's great. And I mean, you're talking to Revit users here. We understand not being able to go backwards, believe me.
Yeah.
So
also
I guess
go ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
One more tip is, if you guys are doing work sharing, and if you're using V-Ray for Revit, in that case, just make sure that everyone is using the same V-Ray for Revit build version. Because otherwise this might create issues like all your V-Ray settings might be messed up. And yeah.
Understood. So that's a good tip. So make sure everyone's on the same version build, not just version but build as well would probably be a good idea, right? I mean, just make sure all the points are right.
You can see it right here. So when you expand the help menu and click the about window, the version is this thing here on top. So you need to make sure that also these numbers here are the same for all users doing work sharing.
Got it. Perfect. Awesome. So I mean, I have a question that may not relate to a new feature, but just sort of ties into the workflow. You know, when I think of the typical rendering engine, but especially V-Ray, there's sort of 3 areas I kind of think of, which is materials, lighting, and then sky domes or sky, whatever you want to talk about, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and so I guess
exactly.
lighting is one that I'm the most curious about as far as when it comes to Revit. What does the workflow look like as far as lighting is concerned between V-Ray and Revit?
Okay. Oh, cool.
Unstable builds, watch out.
Yeah. I might need to restart Revit, but I will try to work with it like that.
Sure.
So in terms of lighting, so you know that in general we have 2 types of lighting, and one is the environment lighting and the other one is the artificial lighting. So here on the toolbar we have a dedicated lighting panel, which allows you to enable or disable all your Revit artificial lights at once. And there is also a panel that controls the type of environment light that you might be using. And there are basically 2 types, V-Ray Sun and Dome Light, which is the image-based lighting, where you use an HDRI. Or if you want, you can completely disable the environment light. And these light types can be combined with a background image, which it is again an HDR, but it does not emit light. And there is this very cool addition, the Light Gen tool, which was added in V-Ray 5 Update 1. This is a tool that will help you generate as many lighting scenarios as you wish. And then you can just pick one of them.
I don't think we're seeing a window when you open the...
You're not seeing it.
The light generator. No, we saw you click light generator, but I just don't think I see the light generator window. So you may have to share that too. Sorry. There it
You should
is.
be able
Now
to
we
see
see it.
it
Yep.
now.
Yep. Now I see it.
Okay, so it will help you generate various lighting scenarios. So once you open it, the first thing you need to pick is whether you want to generate exterior or interior scenarios. The difference is that for interiors, we can only play with sun and sky, whereas for exteriors, we have sun and sky or HDR. So what it does, in case of sun and sky, it will generate as many altitude and azimuth variations as you specify. And those will appear as tiny thumbnails. Here you can specify the size of the thumbnail. But what is more interesting is the HDR workflow. The light gen itself comes with a library of HDRs that can be used for generating image-based lighting scenarios. But in case you have your own HDRs, you can use them from within here. And it's amazing that you can even have a single HDR, but you can generate so many lighting variations from it. For example, right now, I'm not using my own HDR set because I have the default one, which includes 35 unique styles. So the unique styles shows how many HDRs you have. And then you have the variations. Say that we have one style. With the variations, you select how many variants of that style you want to generate. So the maximum is 18. And then we have the seeds, which also relates to the generated variants. And if I'll just use 3 variants for now. It will take some time for them to generate, but once they're generated, you're able to save them as a preset file. And anytime you want, you can load that file and select the lighting you want.
Wow. So it's going to produce different sun and lights, or sun, light, whatever variations, and sort of give you the options to choose, and it'll create a setting for that for whatever scene you choose. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, but like I told you, I think that I will have to restart Revit right now, which I apologize for.
It's okay.
But these are the risks of the live demo.
That's right. That's okay. Yeah, and so while you're restarting it, then so the light generator, it's clearly, so it's using that's, like you said, it was the sky, or the sun, the sky, and then the HDRI. So I'm curious when it comes to the artificial lights, and I guess maybe we can talk about the workflow until you relaunch Revit back up. But what? So let's say, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Continue.
I was just gonna say, I think Revit's a little unique in that, if you're using something like 3D Max or SketchUp, for example, it may not be that big of a deal to put V-Ray light strips and sources all over the place, or that just may be a normal part of the workflow. Whereas in Revit, you may have built out this floor with light families that have light sources within them and all of that, and it'd be almost duplicating the work to recreate this. So I'm curious, how does V-Ray for Revit take into account artificial lights that already exist and use them within the V-Ray plugin?
Artificial lights are converted automatically to V-Ray lights.
So any light source in Revit is converted to a V-Ray light source.
Yeah.
That's
For
great.
example, if you have an IES light in Revit, when you render with V-Ray, it will be converted to its V-Ray IES counterpart with some additional settings adjusted, enhanced.
That's great. No, that's awesome. That's what I was hoping to hear. But I'm glad that you've confirmed that. And so then the setting you had there was just to, if you didn't want to see those lights, that's where that artificial lights off setting is, because automatically it's going to convert them and show them as artificial lighting.
Yeah.
Great. Very cool.
Yeah, there we are. I can really quickly generate a few scenarios like that. 6, for example.
I do remember the process used to be pretty clunky with lighting, especially if you came out of Revit. But somebody in the chat had an interesting question. Scoured, how's it going, man or woman? I actually don't know if you're a man or woman. I'm sorry, Scoured, but you're always here. He or she asked if you have self-illuminating materials in Revit. Is that something that would be converted?
Yes, we have in the asset editor. Can you confirm if you can see it?
Yep, we can see it. Yep.
Okay, in the asset editor right here, in case you want to use a V-Ray material, this is the emissive V-Ray material with some simple and
right. Yep.
understandable settings, like self-explanatory settings. Or another option is in case you're using the new Revit materials, those that were introduced in 2019, and in case I think they had an emissive setting. So if you have a Revit emissive material, it will also be converted automatically when you hit render.
Got it. Yeah, I would imagine that you're better off using a V-Ray emissive material for the final quality of what it would be either way, right? I would think.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So this is what LightGen generates. Of course, if you want to, you can select to generate bigger thumbnails, and once you're ready, you can save them as a preset, which can later on be loaded. And applying one of these presets in Revit, it's just double click on it, and a dome light will automatically be created with that image mapped to it.
Got it. So that was pulling from a library. That was pulling from a library of dome, the library of dome lights that you either had or that came with V-Ray. Is that what that was doing?
Yeah.
Great. Somebody in the chat, Alex, how's it going? Alex asked if you can export 360 panoramic images.
Yes, you can, from both either Vision or V-Ray, because like I told you at the beginning, these are a couple of different engines. Vision is based on the technology of rasterization, which is quick, but it is not as accurate as V-Ray, as a ray tracer is. So in case you want to export from Vision, there's a button with options. In case you want to render a panorama with V-Ray, you need to open the camera panel and set the mode to either spherical or cube map. Great. And there is also stereo option.
Great. So I'm interested myself. So it sounds like the ideal workflow is using Vision as sort of your draft render to some extent, a working view that you can modify and tweak and is faster. And then using the production render for your final. How closely are those results? Is that sort of the workflow you guys were thinking? As in, what you see here is very similar, just with less accuracy to there, or would you still suggest using draft renders in the production side of it if that's the end goal?
They're very close. I would say that you could seamlessly go from Vision to V-Ray. There are still V-Ray features that we haven't added support for, or the support is currently a work in progress. But I think that we will release them on stages as soon as we can. Yeah, but overall, the workflow should not be interrupted.
Yeah. As far as the mapping is concerned, I was interested, or I am interested in if you always have, let's say you have a template or a standard of materials in Revit, right? And the naming's usually the same, the materials are the same from project to project. Is there, can you save that connection? Can you save those settings so that when I open the next project, all these mapped materials are already mapped to my V-Ray materials?
Yeah, so all your V-Ray settings are saved within your Revit project file. This has been done starting with V-Ray Next for Revit. So yeah, it's been here for 2 years now. yeah, so whatever you do here on the toolbar, or the mappings that you will create here, or all the assets that you will create in the asset editor, everything is saved and it's associated with your user. So in case your project is shared and multiple people are working on it, when you navigate to settings, paths, and sharing, we have this drop down here, which allows you, in case of multiple users, you can select their settings and they will be loaded here, and you can import them or adopt them. Also, another way for settings exchange is to export an XML file, which will include the following V-Ray settings categories. And that file can later on be loaded in another project, or in case you're a single user using multiple machines, you can also use the XML file sharing.
Awesome. So there's two questions in the chat that I'll try and pull up to make a little sense here. Somebody asked about, I think there's a he's saying, or she's saying, that there's a V-Ray camera match setting that exists in other versions, maybe in 3D Max or something. Are you familiar? And is that something that's available in the Revit version? I think maybe they're talking about camera matching with real photos or something.
Well, if it's for camera matching with real photos, we don't have this feature yet. But if you can give more details on what exactly you're asking for, maybe I'll be able to give more details.
And then I guess the other question is from Taha, and it has to do with sky domes or HDRI skies. I guess maybe what type can V-Ray for Revit bring in? He or she is saying there's HDRIs that are made in 3D Max V-Ray. Can those be used in the Revit V-Ray? So maybe if you have a library of HDRIs or sky domes or something, can you use those in the Revit version?
Well, in Revit, things are quite simple. So if I switch to dome white, this is what you'll see initially. You will see the intensity, and the dome white itself will be mapped with a solid color. Once you enable the HDR image, all you need to do is just have an HDR and assign it here.
Great.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So I would assume if the question, I'm assuming what they mean by the question is they may have a library of HDRI or skies or something that they're using. They can definitely use those in the Revit version as well.
Yeah. The only thing you need is to have HDRs. Even if you open your file browser, you only need to drag and drop an HDR here, and it will immediately appear.
Great. Awesome.
There is another feature that I really wanted to speak about. It's on the real V-Ray end, and it is called Light Mix. You can find it under the Channels tab, where we basically have all the render elements here. Well, those are called render elements in the rest of the V-Ray integrations, but in Revit they have always been called channels. Yeah, so the light mix allows you, in case you have various light types like artificial lights, environment lighting, and so on, it allows you to modify those lights after your rendering has been completed. So in order not to go modify a single artificial light, for example, and then re-render, we have streamlined this with the light mix. So what you need to do first, of course, enable it. And then we have various grouping options. So this is how your lights will be grouped after the image is rendered. And this is how you will be able to modify them. So option 1 is by family type. Option 2 is to group them individually, but mind that there is a limitation of 64 lights. So all the rest will be included into one single channel. And then we have light groups. And in addition to that, so this rule will be applied even if you have linked files in your rendered model. It will be applied to everything unless you click the exclude linked lights checkbox, which will put all the lights from your linked document in a single channel. And I have an image which I rendered in advance. It's the same building, but another view. And I will just load it. I don't know if you're able to see my frame buffer.
I see your frame buffer, yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's the same building, but from another point. And it's actually a project that some users might be familiar with because it's not the first time I'm showing it. So this is the new V-Ray frame buffer. This is also something new which came with the official launch of V-Ray 5. It has been redesigned. It includes new features like layered compositing, but essentially it is quite similar to the previous frame buffer in terms of which settings are, in terms of where settings are positioned within the frame buffer. For example, if you double click the grids here, I don't know if you see them, you expand the history panel on the left hand side, whereas on the right hand side, you can see the layers. Here I can add the various color corrections that some of them were available also in the previous frame buffer, but didn't work the way they work right now. So if I click on source, you see I have RGB, light mix, and composite here. When I click the light mix, I see the grouping of the light mix channel, which we created from here. Okay, so in my case, that grouping was set to light groups, and I have them. So in the lights main building RVT, which is the file that holds all my artificial lights, I have 10 groups of lights corresponding to the floors of the building. So if I just disable them, they will, you see, they disappear. Yeah. Or another thing that I can do is, let me see, I'm looking for that one. So I can increase the intensity, or I can change the color to something. Yeah, I will use something bright just to show you how it works.
Wow, like so that's rendering a channel that only has the artificial lights by however we want, like by lighting type, and then you can modify it in the buffer afterwards. That's crazy. That's pretty cool. Without re-rendering, right? So it's not re-rendering the scene.
Without re-rendering.
Very cool. Very neat.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah, I don't know if there are any other questions in the chat meanwhile, which I think we hit answer.
Most of the major ones that folks had. Is there anything else, any features that you wanted to show before we wrap up? I think this was awesome. I think this was a great overview of not only some workflow mixed in with the new features, but also other features as well. I know I had some questions answered, so thank you for that.
It's there's so many features that it's really hard to cover everything when we are limited into less than an hour. So one thing that I would like to repeat, you also said it a while back, it's that you always work with lights, and then we have materials, and then geometry. And yeah, by geometry, I mean not only the Revit model, but also those additional geometries that V-Ray provides, like the asset library, FUR, displacement, and so on and so forth. And in addition to these, you can also apply various effects like aerial perspective or environment fog. Aerial perspective is again something like fog, but that type of fog that you see at the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think basically that's it.
Awesome. No, this is great. There was one more question from a user in the chat, which had to do with licensing. If you have a license of V-Ray for 3D Max, is that a different license than V-Ray for Revit?
It depends on the type of your license. We have a V-Ray collection license, which includes all the main V-Ray products. So this means that with one collection license, you can use V-Ray in Revit, V-Ray in 3ds Max, and SketchUp, Rhino, Maya, as well as Chaos Vantage. And as I mentioned, Vantage coming with update 2, there will be also a connection, also export animations.
Oh, great. Very cool. Awesome. This is great, and I appreciate it. I took a lot away from it, and I hope folks in the chat and those looking at it in the future do as well. So that's VA 5 for Revit. I'll make sure to put all the links that you guys need to know about down in the description below, as well as the blog. Any final last words, Anna, before we wrap up?
Thanks for everybody who joined. I hope this demo was useful, and I hope that more people will be interested in our update 2, which is coming really soon after the Christmas holidays. Happy holidays to everyone, and hope to be your guest again soon.
Definitely. I'm a believer now that the workflow has definitely gotten way better than 2016. So I'm super excited to try it out and definitely talk more about it. So thanks again for coming on. I appreciate it, Anna. And for everyone else, thank you guys for joining us today. I appreciate you as well. This is actually the second to last episode of this 2021 season. So tune in next week on Tuesday at same time, so 12:30 p.m. Eastern, as we wrap it up with our season finale. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here on YouTube so you get notified for it. And thank you to Polycam for sponsoring this episode. With that, everyone have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you guys soon.